All right, so another round of bottle basics, and today we are diving through one of my absolute favorite bottles, not just in our portfolio, but honestly, that I would put behind any bar where I'm consulting today, and that is Probitas. Probitas is a unique blended white rum, and this has become my go-to white rum across the board for just about every type of cocktail. And I say just about every type, meaning that obviously if it's calling for a white rum, then this is what I'm going for. Occasionally I will use a little bit of another either Jamaican or Martinican rum, something along those lines if I want a rum agricole to kind of punch up some more of the kind of like grassy characteristics. Or, occasionally I'll go with a Jamaican rum if I want to amplify those aspects of what's already in here. But enough about me and what I like to make for cocktails, but let's look into Probitas and what we can find on this bottle and labels. Now, first and foremost, the name Probitas. Actually, on the back, you have a quick definition here. Probitas, honesty. And that is because it is Latin for honesty, because there is no color, no sugar, no flavoring, no filtration, no additives, and no multi-column spirit. What does that mean? Well, when we refer to the multi-column was an invention of the 21st century, and the multi-column is probably most well known for making neutral grain or grape spirits, things like vodka. So it is really efficient at making fairly neutral, odorless, flavorless spirits. By not utilizing the multi-column here, and only utilizing 17th century double retort pot stills and 19th century twin column coffee stills, that means that every component in this bottle is still very flavorful. Not necessarily neutral or odorless or colorless, which again, the multi-column is very efficient at doing. Now, some multi-column rums, are what we kind of recognize nowadays as white rum in general. And there's nothing wrong with that. That category is clearly very well established. But the reason this is so unique here, or why I'm so thrilled about it, especially when it comes to cocktails, is because there is so much flavor left in here from the actual core material itself, being either molasses or sugarcane juice. Now, as we keep looking into the label, it does say white blended rum, but if you look carefully, you can see there is a little bit of color to it. Now, this does still classify as a white rum, even though there is some color. Now, more often than not, when you encounter other white rums, they are utilizing filtration to remove the color from one of those components being aged, so that it can be crystalline clear and perfectly, white, frankly. But here, the lack of filtration, which in my mind means the enhancement of flavor, because anytime you filter anything out, even if your goal is only to filter out color, you are invariably likely going to remove some of the aromatic and flavor compounds of the thing. So here, no filtration, yet this does still classify as a white rum, and its function is very much that of a white rum. So, white blended rum. Blended, because it is coming from two different distilleries on two different islands. Now, this is also very unique because this is actually the first time in the history of the category of rum that two different distilleries on two different islands directly collaborated on the liquid that goes into the bottle. Now, you will notice on the lower label it actually says a unique blended white rum. The unique is basically calling back to the fact that this is the first time that you had two different distillers collaborating on this. Now, there are other multi-island rums that are out there, multi-island blended whites even, but those are being blended by a third-party company, usually purchasing their rums through a brokerage. They're not necessarily purchasing direct from the distillery. They may be, but more often than not, they are purchasing through a third-party brokerage, and then they are composing what the flavor profile is. Now, there is an artistry to that as well, but I would argue that there is something very unique here in that you have the two master distillers from the two distilleries from where these rums came collaborating on what is in this bottle. So that is very much unique. Now, when we keep going through the rest of the label, you'll also see here an icon or logo for the Guardians of Rum. Now, this is a semi-formal, somewhat informal group of distillers and blenders, as well as some enthusiasts and bartenders globally, that essentially it's like a self-regulating body where everyone has agreed that they will hold one another accountable to consistently abiding by traditional methods of rum making. Now, traditional in the sense of, there's nothing more than whatever your fermented material is. It's being distilled. It is then, being aged in a cask and possibly diluted with water, or possibly not diluted with water, And then they may or may not allow for E150A coloring, which is a caramel-based coloring, which is the same coloring utilized by the Scotch whiskey standards, not to be used beyond what would have come out of the cask, and also could not be used in such a way as to impact the flavor or aromatics of the thing. That's a long description or definition to basically mean they are trying to abide by very traditional spirits production methodology, similar to you would find in Scotch or in bourbon or in other great categories of spirit that are very well known and respected around the world. So the Guardians of Rum are specifically aiming to kind of abide by this classic style of rum making, and they're holding one another accountable to it. So cool. Now, it does state the master blender is Mr. Richard Seal. Richard Seal is the current master distiller and blender at Foursquare Rum Distillery in Barbados, which is who owns Probitas. It is also bottled at Foursquare Rum Distillery in St. Philip, Barbados. Bottled at 47% ABV and, of course, at 750 ml. Now, there is one other name on this bottle, and it does say inspired by, and it's the signature of Mr. Luca Gargano. Now, Luca Gargano is an owner and importer of rums to Italy and to Europe. Now, Luca is actually the one who first connected Richard Seal of Foursquare with Mr. Vivian Wisdom and the family over at Hampden Estate in Jamaica, and had brought up the fact that in the past there has never been a direct collaboration between distillers on different islands. And so when it says inspired by, that is very much what happened here. Luca planted the seed of perhaps there's an opportunity for the two of you to work together and actually determine what a rum in a multi-island blended white rum could taste like. And this is the result of that. Now, I will also mention Probitas has gone on to win a number of awards and significant recognition from bartenders all over the United States as being one of the best rums for the daiquiri, one of their favorites for classic white rum cocktails. I've seen it mentioned in things for a pina colada, to a Mai Tai, to the Hemingway daiquiri, to mojitos, to rum and cokes. Essentially, the El Presidente, which is actually one of my favorite stirred rum cocktails. But that's just to say that there is a lot of versatility in this single bottle of spirit, which is why it is so fun and so unique. Now, the last bit is to look on the back label. Of course, we have our governmental warning, which is required by the United States TTB. We have our imported statement, imported by Altamar Brands, LLC. Of course, again, your ABV, your 750 ml, your UPC code, and then the little paragraph here. So I do want to read what is stated here, which is, Probitas Rum is a blend of white rums from the traditional coffee column still of Foursquare in Barbados and the double retort pot still of Hampden in Jamaica, unsullied by sophistic additives, only impeccably distilled and blended rum for all aspiring cocktail craftsmen. So basically, it's really delicious. I will mention, so we've got, again, basically potentially four components that make up Probitas, and this is not found on the label, but just some other geekery for you while we're at it. You have unaged coffee column still rum coming from Foursquare. You have unaged double retort pot still rum also coming from Foursquare. You have 2-year aged double retort pot still rum coming from Foursquare, and that's where that bit of color comes from. And then you have unaged double retort pot still rum coming from Hampden Estate. And for those of you that may or may not follow Hampden Estate, I can tell you that they make some truly exceptional Jamaican rums. They are responsible for the Trelawney method, which is a very unique methodology of producing rum, and they happen to make some of the world's highest ester content rum out there. Now, if you do know them and you know their marks, the mark that is utilized in Probitas happens to be the LROK. Feel free to Google that up and dive down a massive nerd rabbit hole if you would like. Or if you're already a rum fan, you probably absolutely know what I'm talking about. So those are just a couple of fun notes. One last bit. The rums in Probitas, coming from Foursquare, utilize both molasses wine as well as fresh pressed Barbadian cane juice. So there is both molasses and cane juice rum being utilized in Probitas, coming from the island of Barbados. So just some other fun tidbits. And of course, this is another very long, but hopefully very thorough bottle basics. Cheers.